This story took place in March of 2005 in Florida. I'm Jamie, and I'm now a 36-year-old widow, but at the time this story took place, I was a 21-year-old single mother. I had recently moved to Bradenton, Florida, where my mama lived, from Columbus, Ohio. Within a week of moving to Florida, I had gotten a job at Easter Seals Daycare working with special needs children in early childhood education. In the state of Florida, it's mandatory to work in early childhood education, aka daycare teacher. You have to first take a 40-hour class. I believe it's only about 30 hours now. At this time, I had babysat since I was 11, taken Red Cross classes as a young girl in babysitting, and had worked part-time in Bally's Total Fitness Daycare. This was my first time working in a professional environment. Needless to say, I loved children, and my whole life all I ever wanted was a child. Me and my future husband had a very hard time conceiving, and Promise Rose was my miracle baby. I was the happiest woman alive the day she was born. She is the only child I currently have alive. I hope to have at least one more. I currently don't work in a daycare anymore. The experience I'm about to share pushed me to make more of myself, and am now an RN. The 40-hour classes are broken up by category, and each one is a certain amount of hours. Literally 1 week to the day, I had just completed the hours, category identifying and reporting child abuse and neglect. Had I not taken this class, I believe the outcome of this horrible experience would have never been the same. I had just learned if a child is missing or had been abducted, you immediately lock down the facility and contact the authorities, not immediately look for the child, which is what your instincts tell you to do. My baby girl was in between 3 and 4 months. She had tried and successfully mastered cereal, so next is actual baby food. An infant's taste buds aren't developed, so you want to always start with veggies, because if you start with fruits, most likely they won't want to eat anything else that's not sweet. Just trust me, that's not a road you want to go down. It was a Saturday morning. It was going to be my Beeb's first time eating veggies. I was so very excited. I ventured to my local Walmart. I'm so happy I chose this Walmart because they have on-duty cops guarding this particular Walmart. Promise was sleeping, so I left her in her infant car seat and put the whole car seat into the seat of the shopping cart with her diaper bag and carried my purse. I got the other items I needed first and then ventured to the baby aisle. I was looking at the different veggies and decided on green beans as her first food. Normally you want to try the new food 3 times before you decide if they don't like it or have any allergies. Also, you want to alternate between green and orange vegetables. Knowing this, I turned around to grab 3 stage 1 jars of green bean baby food, turned around to put them in the cart, and my whole world collapsed. My whole cart was gone, including my baby girl. I dropped the jars and screamed, "Where's my baby?" Everyone turned and looked at me, but no one moved. I, to this day, don't know how I stayed so level-headed and reacted with precision. Now listen, I'm a big girl. I'm not morbidly obese, but I am by no means in shape whatsoever. I have many curves, and I love all my perfect imperfections, but I swear you have never seen a fat person run so fast in your life. I immediately ran to the front of the Walmart to the officer and said my child was kidnapped. You need to initiate a lockdown. The Walmart manager happened to be standing right behind me. Both men jumped to action quickly. All doors were shut, locked, and gated, and no one was being permitted in or out. They asked me so many questions, and hysterically crying, I tried to answer to the best of my ability. Cell phones didn't always have cameras in these days, nor were they as common as they are now. Thank God I still had my purse on my shoulder, which I had her hospital baby pictures in, and pictures I had just picked up that day from development. Many volunteers and workers were put into action looking for Promise or any trace of her car seat or belongings. 45 minutes passed of looking, and the initial shock was wearing off. I was beginning to lose hope and frantically screaming for my baby. The cops suggest we look at security tapes, which were now available to view to see if they left the store. By now, many officers were in the building as well. I felt defeated having searched the whole store. I started the long descent to the front of the store. The officers were talking, but I didn't hear anything they said. We passed the women's area and I heard my daughter crying. Yes, a mother knows her child's cry and what each cry sounds like. The cop said, "What?" I said, "Shut up, that's my baby." Everyone stopped and looked at me crazy, but there was a faint cry. I found the entire cart, baby, and all inside of a rack of women's clothes, half in with what looked like the person who hid it trying to hide the cart with other clothes. But this time Promise was screaming her poor little heart out. I was never so happy to hear a child cry. I unbuckled her and held her close to me and finally broke down crying, falling to my knees. My fiasco wasn't over yet, though. I wanted to know who did this to my child. The EMTs looked over Promise to check she wasn't hurt, and by sight and vitals all seemed well besides a dirty diaper, thank God. I was escorted to the security office and shown a truly terrifying CCTV video. Thankfully, they had just installed new cameras in the store, and specifically in the baby aisle because baby formula was being stolen in bulk. Knowing what time she was taken and exactly where I was, it wasn't hard to find the abduction tape. There was a woman with 2 children, and the young male child was seen pushing my cart with my daughter away with the woman and other child in tow. After some time searching through the sea of people shopping that day, the small family was found. Thankfully for her, the officer wouldn't allow me near her. At the time, she claimed her son had stolen the cart, and she was scared she would be charged with a crime or have immigration called on her. Right. I was then asked the stupidest question to date I've ever been asked. Do you want to press charges? I'm pretty sure you all know my answer. A year or so later, the litigation finally began. The woman was in her 20s as well, and of Mexican descent. Turns out the other 2 children weren't even hers. She had kidnapped them as well. When the judge asked her why she did this to me and my daughter, she replied with a smug look on her face, that she felt like it. She had already took 2 other children from the same Walmart, so why not get what she actually wanted? A baby. She was trying to appear insane, but of course she was proven by a psychiatrist to be of sound mind. She was not only charged with kidnapping, but child endangerment and a slew of other charges. The apartment she was staying in was absolutely disgusting, and she was abusing the other children. My heart dropped into my stomach, and I actually vomited when the details of everything were laid out. She had already done this in other states and was on an offender list as well. She was sentenced to 15 to 20 years in prison, and she has tried to parole twice, and I testify every time against this. I have never taken my daughter to Walmart ever again, nor has she eaten green beans. I have severe PTSD from this event. I also am way too overprotective of my daughter. All in all, she is a healthy 14-year-old little woman now. She is such a good child, smart and bright, and the highlight of my life. I'm so blessed to call her my daughter. I literally couldn't ask for a better child. She's a little mouthy, but I have no idea where she gets that from. Thanks so much to law enforcement and first responders. And thank you to all the employees of Walmart on 50. And lastly, thank you so much to all the people who volunteered that day to save my baby girl. To the child-napping monster rotting in prison, I hope you drop the soap. A couple of years ago when I was 16, my friend's mom got me a job as a janitor for a big building where people work in cubicles, and I'd have to vacuum once everyone had left from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. The job was a 45-minute drive, and my parents wouldn't allow me to drive that far at night, which forced me to take 2 trains, one from a station close to home that would take me downtown, and then I would take the second one, which would take me to my job. It took the train to get to my stop about 45 minutes since it had to do many stops. This one day, I had lunch on the first train, which caused me to be sleepy during the second train ride and eventually making me fall asleep. When I woke up, I realized I had missed my stop, but only by about 4 to 5 stops. Naturally, though, I got anxious and got off at the next stop right away. The first thing I noticed was that it was raining and getting sort of dark since it was winter time. So as soon as I got off, I went inside one of the 2 cabins to wait for the train that would take me back to my stop. I was the only person on the platform, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a strong loneliness and a spooky kind of feeling. I had my headphones on while I was looking at what time the train would pick me up, and also texting my manager that I would be a little late. Out of nowhere, though, I noticed 2 Asian ladies in their mid-20s approaching the cabin I was at, and I didn't think anything of it since it was raining, so I thought they just wanted a roof as well. But they were closer to the other cabin, so I wondered why they didn't go to that one. When they got to where I was, I heard them say something to me, so I stood up and took my headphones off to pay attention to what they needed. And this is where it gets weird. Both of them got really close to me. Not leaning, but standing literally inches from my face. Then when they opened their mouths to say something, I immediately noticed that both of them had yellow and extremely crooked teeth and had very repulsive breath. They really loudly started saying the words, "I want phone. Can I have your phone? Give phone," with a really heavy accent. All of this while they had a very creepy big smile with their eyes wide open. The second I tried to back away, one of them put their arm on my shoulder, saying, "Hey, shh, 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 shh," with that big creepy smile still on their faces. I wasn't scared since I've always been the tough brother figure, so I'm always ready to defend myself from anything. I pushed her arm off as I was getting annoyed, and right at that moment I heard the train pull up to the platform, so I got on it and sat on the very front and waited for it to leave. I was distracted texting my manager that I was on my way, so I momentarily forgot about the crazy ladies until I remembered, and just to make sure I looked back at the very end of the wagon, not expecting really anything, but to my surprise, there they were, staring at me with the same crazy smile. And since now we're a couple of meters away from each other, their eyes seemed to not have color, which just made the situation even creepier. I continued looking back every minute or so, and they kept switching seats to get closer to me, all while staring directly at me. I finally arrived at my stop, so I got up and kept my eyes on them with a mad expression on my face, kind of expecting them to get off as well, but they just stared back smiling, waved goodbye, and stayed seated until the train left. I felt a huge weight off my shoulders and walked to the building I worked at, but I just kept thinking about what had just happened during my shift, and since there's very few people who work in this huge building, it made me feel very unsettled for the rest of the night. So this happened when I was 13, I believe, which would have put me in 8th grade. I was about 5'2" and 100 pounds, and my friend wasn't much bigger. I'm 18 now, so this would have been in 2013 or 14. I went with my best friend at the time, Kennedy, to an amusement park not far from where we lived, probably a 30-minute train ride. We spent the whole day there and started to head back around 10:30 p.m. We got on the bus, which would take us to the train station, and there was only one other person on with us. I'm shy, but Kennedy is very extroverted, so she began to make conversation with the other guy on the train. I didn't want to talk, as I had a really bad feeling about this man. He was probably mid-30s, balding, short, chubby, and smelled really weird. I got a bad vibe, but Kennedy just made small talk, asked about his day, where he's from, etc. He told us he's from the city to the west, which I won't name, but we were going to be headed north. We got off the bus and headed to the train, which would not arrive for about 20 more minutes. We sat down and honestly thought that was the end of it. But after a minute, this man comes and sits right next to me and starts talking to us again. At this point, I'm like, something's off here, and I just wanted to go home. You could tell Kennedy was starting to realize this isn't right also. I see a couple of guys, probably 16 or so, big guys, tall and definitely strong, and I make eye contact with one, and I think he sensed the fear in my eyes. He and his friend came over and sat on the other side of us, next to Ken. They talked to us as if though they'd known us forever. Finally, the train comes and it's the opposite way the man should be going, so I feel like we'll be safe. We go to the top of 3 stories on it and sit down. The boys who had come sat by us, sat a few rows down, and we look over and the creep is walking up the stairs. At this point, I'm like, okay. He sits down right next to me so that I'm by the window and he's by the aisle. The boys notice this and come up and basically surround us. I text Kennedy that I'm going to go downstairs and I grab one of the boys to go with me. I told him that this guy is following us and he's supposed to be going the other way and something's not right. At this point, I'm in tears. I'm so scared. One of the guys hugs me and tells me it's going to be all right, and he types on his phone and texts his friend. My stop finally comes by now. It's about 11:30 at night and pitch dark out. We get up and the creep gets up as well and starts to go to get off the train with us. I'm panicking and I look at the boys who grab the man by his shoulder and tell him they know what he's doing and he's not getting off at the stop. He gets angry and starts to try and convince them that he knows us and he's with us and he's like our uncle or something. They obviously don't buy his story, and Kennedy and I run off the train as fast as we can, thanking the guys so much as we run. The man wasn't able to get off at our stop, and we managed to get home safely, thankfully. But every time I'm at that train station, I think of that man and what he could have been planning for my friend and I that night. I know it couldn't have been good. I'm a girl and this happened when I was about 10 years old. During the witching hour, approximately 3 a.m., although I didn't know this at the time, I woke up one night. I went to the bathroom and when I was in the hallway I saw that the lights in our backyard were on. These only came on when it was dark and someone was moving around. Because it was late spring, early summertime, my pet rabbit was in his larger cage so he could nibble on the grass and enjoy the night air. I went to look and saw a shadow sitting next to the cage. Thinking it was one of my parents checking if I had locked the cage before going to bed, I thought nothing of it. When I was back in my room, facing the front of the house, I thought it was chilly and went to close one of the windows. Since I didn't put on any lights inside, I could clearly see someone walking through the garden towards the back of the house. I thought I recognized my mother, so I called out to her. In my 10-year-old mind, I thought she wanted to know I was awake. The shadow looked up to my window and ran to the back of the house. I never heard the back door or anyone walking inside, but still being tired, I didn't think anything of it at the time and went back to sleep. The next morning at breakfast, I asked my mom why she was in the garden during the night and if she had heard me calling for her. She said she didn't go outside after I had gone to bed, and both my parents and my sister dismissed my story of shadow people in the garden and near my rabbit as a dream or nightmare. During my day at school, my mind kept going to the night's events, but I tried to convince myself my family was right. When I came home, my mom called me into the kitchen. She was sitting there talking to a police officer. Not knowing what to think, I sat down next to my mom. She said the officer was here to talk about what I saw during the night. For perspective, we went up to my room so I could show the officer what I saw and where I stood. After going through my entire story, the officer told me they had found papers, money, and passports right at the edge of the forest that bordered our backyard. He told me that they were stolen from a home invasion a couple of streets away. For years, this was all I knew, until my mother told me the following. The home invasion wasn't a couple of streets away. Our next-door neighbors were robbed. My parents truly believed that I had had a bad dream, until police officers came to our house for a neighborhood canvass. It was at that point it started to dawn on them that I indeed might have seen something. It was never known to me or my parents if the burglars got caught, but we always and still believe that my statement had helped the police to get them. At least my being awake and closing my window got our neighbors their passports and some of their money back. I'm a 25-year-old short girl. I'm not ugly, but I'm not a model either. My boyfriend dumpster dives and will usually leave me alone in the car to grab stuff around the other side of the buildings. Normally, I just listen to music, watch YouTube, or whatever on my phone. This time, we weren't using my car as it died, instead using his car, which we never use as it's really old. So, windows rolled down, he turns the car off as his headlights stay on with the car regardless. He's gone for about the usual 15 minutes, but longest 15 minutes I've felt in years. Not long after parking and settling in, I see headlights in the otherwise abandoned Staples parking lot. Sometimes it's a cop, lovers, guy wanking it, or someone sleeping in their car. So I'm not alerted by another car. I don't really care, but we did drive by that car and was full of trash to the brim. Honestly thought it was abandoned. But anyways, I assumed we awoke a homeless guy sleeping in his car. What I found odd, though, was a blue 2019 Hyundai. I know this car well. Many people drive it, as does my best friend. I really wouldn't expect someone to fill a new car with that much trash, and wondered if they were that bad off mentally, how could they afford a new car? I can't. Still, I shrug it off. You see quite a bit of midnight dumpster diving, a lot of people watching. So this car rolls up behind me and I get a little on edge, as this is kind of weird. Then suddenly their brights turn on, and of course I look back to see what their deal was. My blood ran cold. I was frozen in fear with tears as the man gets out of his car. I go to roll up my window. Of course, my boyfriend took the keys without thinking because he had to turn the car off to turn off the lights. He starts mumbling. I can't understand anything, as in the slowest walk possible starts making his way to the passenger side of the car. I feel like I can't breathe as I watch him, smiling, walking over to me. I'm crying without even blinking, just rolling down my face. I felt so helpless, paralyzed. He gets up close with his hands on the door window. I can see his ungroomed nails on the inside of the car. All I can hear, honestly, is my own heartbeat and his mumblings. He starts licking his lips and says something along the lines of, "You're pretty," and asking if I was a call girl, being out so late. I can now smell the liquor on his breath. I don't know why, but being called that snapped me out of my fear-ridden state. Opening the door, he was leaning on, but he pushed back and said, "No, girl, you're mine tonight." Just then my body reacted faster than my brain, kicking the door open with both feet. He hit the ground hard. He wasn't moving. I run to the back of the building, keep checking if he's running after me. Halfway back I see my boyfriend, with a smile that quickly turned to concern. I just cry and say that there's a man by the car. He stops to look, and from a distance he can see the man laying there. I've never seen my boyfriend so angry and scared. His grip on me tightened as he said be prepared to run. But as he watches the man, he doesn't move at all. With fear, minutes later he asks me, "Is he dead?" I tell him I don't know. I pushed him hard and he was against the door. Slowly he creeps over to check to make sure I didn't hurt this guy, making me wait far away. He said he was breathing, snoring even. I seemingly knocked him out or, in his drunken state, fell asleep. There was no blood, but we called an ambulance anyways. I don't want to be caught leaving the scene if he did pass away. The officer asked what we were doing here, and dumpster diving is actually legal, so we just admitted outright. Obviously, the guy was struggling with something in the state of his new car filled with trash, drunk in a parking lot at 1 a.m. I hope he gets the help he needs at the hospital, and stays away from women when he drinks. For a bit of context, I'm a 25-year-old woman and a very creative person. I'm no stranger to my mind creating terrible nightmares. But this man, Shadow or whatever he is, doesn't seem to be just a nightmare. But the first time I encountered the smiling man was back when I was in high school. I had a very long day of school and working at my part-time job, so opted to go to bed early when I got home. I said goodnight to my parents and went to my room, my old dog Max following me. I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. I'm not sure how long I was asleep, but I awoke in a panic. I wanted to sit up and turn on my light, but I couldn't get up. My eyes darted around my room, landing on what seemed to be a man, a jarring silhouette outlined by the moonlight streaming into my room. Though I strained my eyes staring at him, I couldn't make out anything more than his black eyes and his ear-to-ear, bright white, pointed smile. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. I looked over to my dog. He was softly sleeping next to me. When I looked back at the smiling man, he had moved closer to my bed. It then became the sick version of the no blinking game. Once I was losing, till finally his face was leveled with mine, and in sheer terror I closed my eyes tight, not able to stand that smile anymore. My alarm blared, and I nearly fell out of bed, covered in a cold sweat. These have been my regular experiences with the smiling man. I did research and brought him to life in drawings and even paintings in order to face the fear, but he continued to visit me from time to time. And at one point, I had decided that he appeared when I had some pretty serious stuff happening in my life, loss, illness, etc. But now, after years of not seeing him in my nightmares, he's back. It's all the same. I can't move. I can't call out to my husband or my puppy, and I have to stare at his awful smile. And this time, I can feel his long, cold fingers slithering across my body, even through my sheets. He has been lingering practically around my belly. Me and my husband had started talking about having children. I fear for the worst. This happened 8 years ago in a house that used to belong to my mother's friend until she passed away in a horrible accident. That information will be important later. One morning, myself, my sister, and my friend were having a fun time running away from my younger brother as he chased us through the house. We were around 10 at the time, and he was around 7. After a while of running around, our legs grew tired, so we ran to the bathroom at the end of the hall and locked ourselves in. For a minute, we were all giggling while my younger brother was saying in a creepy kid's voice, "Let me in." Everyone was laughing and smiling until we noticed our brother was now silent. Too silent. That's when the air grew cold and the tension was sickening. Normally, we would think he was just hiding from us, but not this time. A looming sense of dread came with that silence that sunk our stomachs. I started to reach towards the door handle when I heard my brother give a blood-curdling scream while he pounded on the bathroom door. We scrambled to unlock the handle where our brother's crying words deafened us. "Let me in, please," he repeated over and over again. When the door finally flung open, he ran and buried his face in our arms. "What's wrong? What happened?" we all asked, knowing he wasn't playing around. "There was a girl," he said through his loud sobs. We looked quickly at each other in confusion while he continued. She only had half a face. The other half of her body was burnt, and just a skeleton." No words could describe the way I felt at that moment. "She turned to me, got on her tippy toes and fingers, and ran at me." Even through all these years, I remember that day so vividly for some reason. The previous owner, my mom's friend, lost her life when she was in a head-on collision with an 18-wheeler while going to pick up her daughter. She was ejected from the vehicle, and her left side was burnt from where her body collided with the grill of the large truck. All I could think was this was her. That house had other creepy things happen that I have connected with her. One day when my sister woke up, she saw a woman fitting the description of what my mother's friend was wearing the day she passed away. Another instance was when I was playing in my room and a ball rolled out from under my bed. When I rolled it under the bed again, it came back one last time. I looked, and nothing was there. The only thing is, all of the other paranormal happenings that we tied to her were nice, like she was watching over us. But what my brothers saw in that house, that didn't seem so pure. It seemed menacing. To start, it was this summer, and I was 14. I spent the night at my friend's house. We'll call her Cynthia. So I rode the transit 20-something miles east. I don't really go east since I live on the beach cliff. Beach towns are more popular, but inland for a while is just highway. This town in the middle of the woods that was only visited by tourists if they were truly lost because it was a 10-mile hidden turn from the main highway. This town was one long road with a grocery store, gas station, and motel with multiple roads down to pretty old houses. This place had some history pertaining to the local native tribe. With tall, opaque walls of forest everywhere, I was on high alert because wendigos were talked about seriously and seen often. After walking down the completely quiet road for some time, I made it to her house. It was around 10 p.m. when I arrived. Sometime later we got bored and of course decided to walk to Cynthia and I's friend's Chemius's house and decided to steal some greenery from her dad's greenhouse, if you know what I mean. 3 a.m. and some irrational decisions later, we are walking down the road and shivering cold. We cut through the trailer park and for some reason we had so much unexplainable adrenaline and also jumped over a 7-foot baseball fence which is curved inwards towards the field, making tremendous noise climbing and jumping. We regretted it instantly, and we both turned scared after noticing that we were now on the baseball field and to our left was exposed woods. Cynthia looked scared out of her mind, and I picked up on it fast since we stood there in silence and pitch-black dark as there wasn't a street light for about 30 feet. I whispered, "We can't jump back over the baseball fence, it's curved." So we started to walk along the fence with Cynthia looking, turning around frequently. After about 20 feet, we turned around and saw a freakishly tall thing about half a football field away on our side of the fence. It was illuminated on its left side by somebody's window. We froze and stared while my heart dropped. My face went cold and my stomach retracted in fear. I couldn't tell which way it was facing, but this horrid thing moved slightly and I noticed one thing. The legs were bent backwards like a deer. It was standing 2-ish feet above the fence, making it almost 9 feet tall. We booked it and ran the short distance to the public trail bathrooms across the deserted road. She pushed me inside in front of her. We locked the door instantly, choosing to be trapped. She grabbed her phone hesitantly and we looked at the empty bars. Obviously, sleep wasn't an option. We sat in that bathroom, freezing on the concrete floor for hours. Around the 30-minute mark, we heard gravel right outside the bathroom. We both moved slowly, slid across the bathroom, still not letting each other go. Under her coat, clearly this thing was circling us. After 3 or 4 obvious circles, it slowly went back to silence. Watched the sun come up. We heard some cars go by since daylight, and we decided on the next faint sound of a car that we'd run to the early open gas station. Cynthia was drinking out of the sink when I alerted her of the car. We both grabbed our backpacks, and she swung the heavy door open like it was nothing. After the short sprint and inside the station, I looked through the glass door, and I thought I saw it approximately 25 feet from the bathroom. Pretty sure that it was walking into the forest. When I turned around, I told her that I couldn't see it anywhere and that it was probably far gone. I'm a 19-year-old male, but growing up, my grandparents had custody of me. I lived in their house, but my dad was around. At this point in time the story took place, he lived in his own house, and I was somewhere between 6 to 8 years old. I would go over there on weekends or after school sometimes to be with him. My father isn't the best of people, and he was involved in some very shady stuff. He had a lot of friends come through the house, but my favorite were referred to by my dad as the Mexicans. They were my favorite friends because they would arrive to the house, walk back to his room for a few moments, and leave. I was so used to being ignored or in the background while people stayed all day and night that this was refreshing. One dark night, my dad's friend came and got me from my grandparents. Right before we get into the neighborhood, my dad's girlfriend pulled up next to us. She had a conversation with my driver. I don't know what was said, but the mood suddenly changed and he rushed to my dad's house. We pull in front of the driveway and get out of the car. My dad quickly comes to the car, shadowed from the porch light behind him. He was angry, more angry than I'd ever seen him. In his rage, he comes up to the car and throws a deck of cards at the man who drove me to his house. He gets in his face and starts yelling at him, swearing and accusing the man of betraying him. Both the man and I were so confused. Me more than anybody else. As my dad took a breath to calm down, he explained that somebody had came to the house dressed like police officers but with ski masks on. They knocked on the door and eventually ended up kicking it in. They came for my dad and used a plug-in-and-play Pac-Man cord to tie him up. They stuck guns in his face and ransacked the house. The driver and I were both shocked. Thankfully, we had just missed the intruders, and my dad ended up getting free from the unconventional restraints. We all walked inside the house. I went straight to my room to see what was touched. Nothing was taken except a power cord to my original Xbox. My room was completely untouched, which surprised me, but I had so much kid stuff I wrote it off as using the toys as an explanation. My dad's room was almost cleaned out. His things in the living room and kitchen were also gone. He became engulfed in his rage again. I saw him yell and swear as he kicked a leftover chair. I quietly walked back into the living room and sat on the couch, my young mind racing, wondering if they would come back. Fear flowed through my body, and at this time I noticed how late it was. It was a school night, but my adrenaline was still pumping. I decided I couldn't go to school tomorrow. Terror still ran through my body, and I sat there and cried. This wasn't the only time something like this happened. After that experience, there were maybe 2, maybe 3 more home invasions. Some involved guns, some just involved beating my dad up with clubs and brass knuckles. I no longer felt safe inside the house. Anytime I was near the property, I became nervous. The times I would actually go over there, I would be scared out of my mind if a shadow in the night moved or an unexpected friend came over. Eventually, the police found my dad's stuff in a truck and returned most of his things back to him. Years later, I found out that my favorite friends, the one my dad called the Mexicans, were his dealers, and they would come and rough him up or take his things as collateral when he wouldn't pay his debt. Or at least, that's what I'm told. For context, I am a 20-year-old Hispanic woman, and I am 4'11". In my city, there was a scare around 2 years ago about a human trafficking tactic that would get young girls to go to a church of some kind and be kidnapped there. Some girls at a local mall were approached by 2 women who would ask them if they wanted to learn about God, the Mother. They knew what the trick was and ran immediately to security, and the other recruitment women ran away as soon as they saw security. What God, the Mother, is far darker than a simple church. These women try to trick you into feeling safe because you are talking to women. They ask for your number and email in order to contact you. This is for you to be called to a certain place or maybe even track you. The reason I mention this is because I was almost kidnapped. I was, and currently am, attending community college in order to get a transfer to a better university. It may seem expensive, but it helps me financially in the long run. It was around winter semester when this happened. I was waiting outside a classroom my friend was in so that we can take the bus together to go back home. While I was waiting, 2 women of Asian descent were walking around and talking to girls. I looked up and thought, well, it is community college. They may be a club or people allowed into school grounds to promote something, so I didn't pay it much mind. That was until they came up to me. I was listening to music and they waved to get my attention. I took off an earbud and they asked if I knew about God the Mother. I immediately felt a cool sweat near my neck. It had been drilled in my mind that I wouldn't be gullible and to stand my ground no matter how introverted I was. I told them calmly that I wasn't interested and they persisted a bit but ultimately gave up. However, as they were walking away, they went up to another girl to do the same to her, but they recognized her. They went to the same classes as that woman that they were talking to. Not once did they ask her about God the Mother. So now I knew for sure that they target those either not part of the church or that they simply know a certain someone of that church to not participate. My friend finally came out and I told her everything. We went downstairs from her classroom and there they were again, explaining about the church. As soon as the young woman was done talking to 2 Asian women, we let her catch up to where we were and told her everything. Me and my friend ended up saving a life that day. I'm a 17-year-old girl. I have found the one I will be staying with for the rest of my life. And I have a dark, twisted, horrible past that haunts me. I am writing this to my boyfriend, my fiancé, and the one person who has accepted me throughout it all. My depression has gotten worse. I can't think about the past again without breaking down. I wish I could get over every little thing and not hurt. I love you so much. I deal with most of the pain on my own because I don't want to tear you down with me. You don't know how much you mean to me. You mean everything to me. I don't ever want to be a burden on you. I don't want to disappoint you, let you down, tear you down, anything. I don't want to put you through any kind of pain. And if I told you every single time I was down, I'd be a burden on you in so many ways. So I hide some of it and let the rest out while you're asleep, and then cuddle you until I feel better. I know it's not right, but I love you so much I can't bring myself to tear you down with me. I don't want to drag you down. I'm supposed to be lifting you up, like you do to me every single second you're with me, the highlight of my day. You are the sun that brings me life and the only reason I wake up so early, because I'm so excited to spend every last second I have with you. I know this is depressing and you might be overthinking if you do ever read this, but I care about you so much. I don't ever want to see you hurt. It'll hurt me too much if you ever got hurt. I couldn't bring myself to love me ever again if I ever hurt you in any kind of way, so I'm sorry I deal with a lot on my own. It's only for you, so I can prove I am strong, so I can prove I can get better. And you don't have to watch over me every second of the day, so you can live your life to the fullest, live your dream, live the way you want without having a huge burden on your shoulder. I love you, and I'll start loving me more. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, /letsreadofficial, and give and receive feedback from the community, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And join my Discord to interact with me and other listeners directly. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon. And maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in long compilation form and save huge on data, located on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Links in the bio. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.